There is but one thing left to do. That one thing is rank the entire Star Wars franchise. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel, and I have reviewed every single movie in this franchise. Now it is time to rank them. So without further ado, I'm going to rank all 11 Star Wars films. And again, this is my list. This is not your list. So put your list down below. I'd really love to hear your thoughts on where your ranking is and whether or not you agree with me or not on some of the picks for my ranking. So let's start off with number 11, which is Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Unfortunately, this movie has Jar Jar Binks. It has all of the most boring and the worst elements of Star Wars. The terrible humor directed at kids, whether you're talking about a lot of the funky looking CGI, a lot of the talk about midichlorians. This movie really bogs down a lot of what people love about Star Wars, and I honestly hate this film. The only thing that saves this film for me is the final lightsaber battle between Obi-Wan Kenobi, Qui-Gon Jinn, and Darth Maul, which is my all-time favorite lightsaber battle. In Duel of the Fates, definitely my favorite part of the Episode 1 soundtrack. Number 10, Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Didn't have to get very far for this one. This movie, unfortunately, is very slow. It's very political in its makeup. And the biggest issue I have with this movie is how Anakin Skywalker is portrayed in this film by Hayden Christensen. I can forgive the kid who played Anakin Skywalker in Episode 1. I understand, I get it, you're a kid, you know, you're young and you're naive. But Hayden Christensen does not do a very good job or a convincing job of really making you feel like this is the Anakin that eventually becomes Darth Vader. There are moments in this film where he does kind of have those dark moments, especially when he kills all the sand people who have kidnapped and captured and put into slavery his mother. But there are moments in this film where you just kind of have to roll your eyes in the back of your head and realize, wow, did they miss the mark on this film with horrible, horrible droid jokes, to C-3PO being a big player in this film. The thing I really like is I love the big Jedi battle. I think that's one of the best sequences in Star Wars canon. But other than that, this movie is just a lot of noise and no substance. Number 10, Solo, A Star Wars Story. I was not a very big fan of Solo. I still am not a big fan. Every time I watch the movie, I like it a little bit more, but to me, the problem with this movie is no one wanted this film. We already know enough that we need to know about Han Solo from the original trilogy. Alden Ehrenreich does a decent, serviceable job here with what he's given. Emilia Clarke, I don't think outside of Game of Thrones, she's really hit the mark with anything. Woody Harrelson's a lot of fun on screen, but this movie doesn't really add any stakes. It doesn't bring any high tension. There's really no sense of doubt what's going to happen. And the film just tries to kind of play at nostalgia and kind of winks and nods here and there and references in Star Wars lore and canon that we know, and unfortunately it just does not do a good enough job to make it anywhere higher on this list. I wish it could, but it doesn't. Number 9, Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. You guys knew this one was coming. I was not a big fan of this film. I think this movie relies too heavily on fan service and nostalgia. The fact that this movie really tries to add so many ridiculous, crazy, outside of the rule type things to the Star Wars universe and canon makes zero sense. They do a terrible job of ending a lot of the characters' arcs within the story. They do a lot of unthinkable things and a lot of things that you thought they were going to do, but this is a film that has a lot of cool ideas, a lot of cool things and thoughts, but ultimately the film suffers because of its execution of those things, and so the film just kind of becomes, again, a lot of noise, no substance. And it's a movie that I could see a lot of people really loving, but the problem with this film is that it just feels like Star Wars had no direction moving forward, and so we got left with something like this that kind of retcons everything before it other than The Force Awakens, and you don't feel like the story actually flew together nicely and was interwoven seamlessly, and so that's why this is number 8 in my ranking. Number 7, Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. I like this movie, but there are a lot of things I dislike about this film. A lot of what they try to do in elements of trying to shift direction from The Force Awakens to having basically another setup film with these characters was such a misstep for me, a misdirection. I didn't like what they did with Luke's character. I don't like the arcs that they try to explore with Rey and her origin. I love the idea that Snoke really doesn't matter. It's really about Kylo Ren. But this movie, the problem that I have with this film is this film just kind of feels like a side adventure, that we don't really move forward in the progression of any of these characters other than Kylo Ren. There is no progression to Finn's character because he goes on some type of mission that is just absolutely awful, and it's the worst part of the film, and it feels like the prequels. Rose was introduced, and honestly, the stuff that they give her to chew on does not work at all in the film. They waste so much potential talent like Benicio del Toro and Gwendolyn Christie that this movie just really leaves me frustrated. The ideas and what it was trying to go for, there's a little bit more there than The Rise of Skywalker, but ultimately this film leaves me with an empty stomach and really a lot more questions than I had previously. Number 6, Star Wars The Force Awakens. Episode 7, this was a great way to bring back the Star Wars franchise. Do something creatively different, but also at the same time creatively similar, and making it feel like A New Hope Part 2 or A New Hope for the modern generation. My issue with this film is it relies too heavily on A New Hope, and that's where you get a lot of the same mentor to trainee relationships, whether you're talking about Han Solo to Rey, whether you're talking about Snoke to Kylo Ren. There's a lot of similarities within the original trilogy, and I wish that they would have explored something different, something more, something that we haven't seen quite before, but this film feels so similar to everything that we got in the original trilogy. J.J. Abrams went back to the well that worked, which was the original trilogy, where it has most of the fans who absolutely love everything that they did. And so the movie tries to craft this new picture of where the galaxy stands after the fall of the Empire. And to me, certain things don't really work and certain things don't match up. And so we're just kind of basically two sides at odds with one another is the theme of this film once again. So this movie relies heavily on its predecessors and doesn't really try to ever become its own thing. We are now at the top 5. Number 5 is Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. I love this film. This movie, to me, doesn't really have a lot of negatives. And the reason why it's number 5 is because the other 4 I just am more entertained by. They're the ones that I'll go back to time and time again when I want to watch a Star Wars film. But I love this film because the ending of this movie makes perfect sense, but it does add a little bit of levity and a little bit of conflict with you after you're done watching the film, because you fall in love with these heroes, you fall in love with their mission and their stories. And to me, I think crafting a great story that makes sense to original lore, but adding some new things that we never got before, is something that I wanted to see more of in like Star Wars The Force Awakens. This movie gave us that. We obviously have a very similar structure in its story, and it's something that we know already in terms of the Death Star, the plans of the Death Star, the Empire, the Rebellion. So we already knew all of this going in, but the thing that this movie does such a great job on is giving us those moments that are nostalgia and amping them up to 11. What I mean by this is Darth Vader smoking some fools in the Rebellion, which is absolutely amazing. Darth Vader is my favorite character in Star Wars canon, and really in movie history, he's my favorite character of all time. And so to have him going and absolutely destroying a bunch of rebels is my favorite thing that I've seen in a Star Wars movie ever. And it's the thing that really holds this movie up for me, because it keeps me completely engaged all the way through, up until the moment where we get to see Princess Leia getting the plans and saying that this is hope. It's just such a great film, and it adds a lot of new things to the story of Star Wars, and it feels familiar, and it does such a great job of interweaving everything together very nicely. Number 4, Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. I love this movie. This is one of the most entertaining films. I watch it as a comedy. I can watch this as a pure action film, but all of the action sequences are emotional, especially the end lightsaber battle between Anakin and Obi-Wan. You feel it. You feel them have this relationship one with another. You see them at odds, and understanding that Anakin thinks that the Jedi are really the problem, when Obi-Wan knows that it's the Sith that are really the problem and that Palpatine is evil. And you get to see these two brothers who have really fought for so long together at odds with one another. It's so Shakespearean in nature. And this is one of those movies that I could watch every single time and just have a blast with. It's so entertaining. It's engaging. It's everything that when I was a kid that I loved about Star Wars. There are some really cringy moments. Some of the dialogue is bad. Some of the creepy Anakin sequences are bad. But honestly, though, this film on its own is a film that really defined the prequels and all of the good things about the prequels, as opposed to all of the negative and bad things from the prequel films, like Episode 1 and Episode 2 highlighted in their respective films. Number 3 is the original 1977 Star Wars. I love this film. This film, to me, there's nothing wrong with it. it brings nothing but pure nostalgia. The fact that we got arrival of Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, Ben Kenobi, Leia, Han Solo, Chewbacca, R2, C-3PO. I mean, it brings together all of the characters that we have loved for such a long time. It really started this entire franchise that has cultivated generations, and it's something that I'm truly honored to have an opportunity to be a fan of this franchise, and if it wasn't for this film, I wouldn't be a fan of it. So it's number 3 because it is the definitive Star Wars movie, and it's only lower because the other 2 films I just find a little bit more entertaining and I'd stay more engaged with, and it does something to the story where it just feels there's more tension, there's more added buildup that I think is more prevalent in those movies than in this one. Number 2 is Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. What a great film. Whether you're talking about Yoda teaching Luke the ways of the Force, whether we're talking about Luke coming to the revelation that him and Leia are brother and sister, and he helps his father redeem himself, Darth Vader. He destroys the Emperor. This is such a good movie, and it does everything that it needs to do, and we get a great conclusion to this story. It's very self-contained. It feels like it's an appropriate sequel to the prior films before it, and it's just such a great way to cap off the series. I love the Ewoks. I don't care. I know a lot of people hate the Ewoks. I freaking love them. You gotta love them. They're savages. They will eat people alive, and honestly, this is one of those movies that I can always go back to and just have a great time with, because there are those moments that I absolutely love. Jabba the Hutt's little palace that he has above the Sarlacc pit. There are so many great moments in this film that really keep me entertained and engaged throughout the entire film. And number 1, the best Star Wars film of all time, and that is a fact, and it should be number 1 in everyone's ranking, Empire Strikes Back, Episode 5. What's there to say? Best movie ever. Darth Vader is Luke's father. That's it. I'm not even going to say anything more because it is the best Star Wars film of all time. Go watch my review and you'll see why. Anyway, guys, that is my ranking of all 11 Star Wars films. Let me know your ranking down below in the comment section. Make sure you guys drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel for more content just like this. And as always, may the Force be with you.